Good morning, Chris. How are you, sir?
Morning, pretty good. Trying to catch up on some caffeine to get
Yeah,
myself good
no,
and
no, but you're on the beam, that's for sure. Let's start with Jesse Tisch.
yes.
Police Commissioner Tisch, are you surprised? Um, Obviously, both have taken sort of opposing positions to some extent, right?
Sure.
I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, was it the business community? Was it the governor? Was it the AG? I've read several people. I want to hear your analysis of what ultimately happened and the why.
Yeah, put it like this to address the first thing you pointed out about being surprised. I think a lot of people are actually a little bit surprised about this announcement coming this morning over the past few days. And I'm sure I'm not the only reporter that's been hearing this, but the rumor has been that Jesse Tisch was going to reject the offer,
Mm.
say, I politely decline to take it. That's been the buzz that's been going on in politics and media circles for days at this point. And now, early this morning, the Mamdani transition puts out this message saying she has accepted. Now, another thing that's very interesting is that in that message from the transition, it's very copacetic between the commissioner and the incoming mayor. They're praising each other, saying they look forward to executing on public safety together. The commissioner also put out a very different message to NYPD officers this morning, in which she made clear to rank and file cops in the department that she does not agree with Mr. Mamdani on a number of different issues, and that she's staying, in her words, because she wants to be their representative and speak up for them and against the mayor when need be. So I think there's still some friction there and still a very interesting dynamic between the incoming mayor and one of his most high profile appointees. Now, to address the second part you mentioned, I do think it has a lot to do, this pick, with Mr. Mamdani wanting to kind of start off on a good note with a lot of powerful interests in the city. The business community has been very vocal about wanting to have someone like Jesse Tisch at the helm of the NYPD, even though Mamdani comes from a very different school of thought when it comes to public safety and politics.
Can I say something? There is some historical context. People forget, well, people forget that Ray Kelly was one of the most popular people in New York City once
Mhm.
upon a time. De Blasio said, look, I'm going to remove him and I'm going to reform stop and frisk. People were concerned that Blasio turned around and named Bill Bratton, right? Where some of the advocates in the left sort of had with broken windows and sort of that model, right? Of Compstat and people. But I think, de Blasio demonstrated obviously that he needed, I think, to show that the same interest that you're referring to now. So I think there is some precedence.
Certainly.
Farina, obviously a lifelong educator, was his chancellor, and then Bratton was police commissioner. And I think, Mayor-elect Mamdani, I guess, feels or thinks the same way, which is you have to sort of, to your point, make sure you shore up that part of the city. But let's move on, Chris, to now the appointments. So now there's three.
Mhm.
Longtime chief of staff, Dean Fullahan, and now Jesse Tisch, police commissioner Jesse Tisch. Thoughts on those, if any, or what you're hearing in terms of those appointments?
I mean, I think we're seeing the mayor-elect trying to strike a balance, right? Because he wants to have the energy that propelled his movement during this campaign. The DSA youthful energy that we see in an appointment like El Biscard Church, his incoming chief of staff. She's very representative of that DSA movement that very much helped him get elected. At the same time, he doesn't want to just staff his administration with people from that side of the political spectrum, that side of the government world. And then you look at picks like Dean Fullahan, a veteran of Albany, a veteran of city government, a steady hand. And I think Mamdani kind of wants to strike the balance between making appointments from both of those sides so that he broadens out his administration with both people who are ideologically aligned with him, and also the people who knows all the ins and outs of how city government works. Jesse Tisch, I think, fits more into uh, that philosophy of an appointment, right? I think he sees her as someone who has done a good job during the time she's been at One Police Plaza. She's certainly not ideologically aligned with the mayor-elect, but he sees her as someone who can keep the momentum going at 1PP.
Let's go speakers race now, because I wanna let you get back to this news cycle, that ever-changing news cycle.
Seriously.
Speakers race, what are you hearing? The forums are beginning to heat up. NYU common calls last night, Abney the other night. Somos, there was some fireworks,
Yeah.
and some what I would say shots fired, figuratively. So
I
what?
assume you're
How do you?
talking about Diana Ayala there, or I'm not sure. You
Yes,
tell me.
exactly. And she's doing, I mean, Councilmember Ayala's, making her rounds on the circuit, making the case as to why Councilmember Menace shouldn't be the speaker. But I
Yeah.
want to hear your thoughts, and I want to know what you're hearing in terms of on background. Will the mayor weigh in? What are your thoughts?
It's a great, I
Again,
mean,
so
it's a
far
great question.
publicly, it's been, no, I'm hands off, and I work with whoever the ultimate speaker, whoever has the most votes. But I want to hear your thoughts.
I I don't think the mayor-elect is gonna get involved in any sort of official capacity. I'm speculating here. I don't know that for a fact. I'm not in Zoran Mamdani's brain and knows everything he's thinking about. But it just, if you remember from 2021, then incoming mayor Eric Adams made a pretty serious misstep when his team started getting very involved in the speaker's race by backing a candidate who ultimately ended up not winning. That set off a very bitter relationship between the council and the mayor. And I think Mr. Mamdani and his team are savvy enough to know when to keep their powder dry, so to say. Now, does that mean that Mr. Mamdani might not have a preference? Of course not. If you look at the different candidates, I think his natural pick would be Crystal Hudson, who is clearly the more progressive candidate in the race. She's also one of the front runners. But to what you mentioned about Diana Ayala and shots fired, and the race is heating up, and we're starting to get into that part of the speaker's race where I think we're going to see a lot more harsh criticism between the candidates of each other, and not just presenting what their own vision will be for the council, but explaining to other members, explaining to the public why they think their opponents are very ill-suited for the job.
Chris, who's backing who though? I get that the mayor's gonna basically stand down, based on right today as
Yeah.
of 11 November 19. But who's backing who, right? Who are you hearing are the forces behind each candidacy? Is it county leaders? Is it labor unions? Is it members? Is it the Progressive Caucus, right? I don't
Yeah.
know. Who are you hearing has, I know Congressmember Greg Meeks has publicly said, I'm with Julie Menin, but give me
Yeah.
some background in terms of what you're hearing.
I think on that point too, we are, even though in a more normal year where the general election and the mayoral race is not as competitive as it was in this cycle, a speaker's race would be in full swing, and we would know by now where all the unions are standing. We don't quite know that yet, and as you know, labor plays a very important role in this race. I think really the only one of the only unions we really know where they stand is HTC, the hotel workers union. They have pretty explicitly lined up behind Julie Menin. But the real, heavy hitters, DC 37, 32 BJ, it seems they are still feeling things out, trying to decide exactly where they're going to land, which candidate they want to back. And that's obviously going to be very meaningful. In terms of county leaders, like you mentioned, Greg Meeks has made very clear that he's behind Menon. Besides him, the Brooklyn County chair has been a little bit iffy on where she stands. I think a lot of the power players here are still feeling things out, trying to decide where they're going to land.
Funny, DC 37 executive director said that in 2 weeks we'll know the outcome, which is interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, that
It'll all be resolved in a couple of weeks. So I guess they're closer than what we think, right?
what else did he tell you?
I mean, that was on public. He said that on
Yeah.
on the record. I mean, it's there, it's public. Chris, I want to hear your thoughts. It's interestingly enough. Now let's move to Mayor Adams.
Mhm.
I want to hear personally, what are your thoughts on some of the things he said about you publicly? And did it have any impact, of any, on how you do your job, which is report the news, and the citizens of New York City and New York State, right, have the right to sort of hear an unbiased
Mhm.
opinion of what's actually happening, and primarily in your case, City Hall. How did it, what do you think that was about? And how did it, if any, did it impact your job? I just want to hear about, Chris, just take your journalist hat off, because it seemed like it was actually, I don't know if I had ever seen something of that nature in my time, in government and moving around. I want to hear your thoughts, because I was like, well, I wonder how he actually, because
I
you
mean,
sort of took a stoic approach and business, which is what you should do, right? When
yeah.
you're a professional, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, you've been doing this for way longer than I have, and I can
Mhm.
tell you too that I've certainly never seen a mayor, an elected official in New York City behave in the way that the mayor did towards me, in the way that he was kind of, I guess personally insulting me, whatever you want to call it. But to address your question, I don't know what's in the mayor's mind. I genuinely don't know what it is that makes him hate me as much as he does. Because I'm certainly not the only reporter in the city who has written stories about him that might not look great. It's just Eric Adams has had a very tumultuous tenure at City Hall, as you know, indicted, basically everyone in the upper levels of his administration having resigned under a cloud of investigation. There are a lot of other reporters that have been reporting critically about this mayor for years, and he obviously seems to have a personal problem with me. Again, I don't really know what that is. I've never asked him because honestly, I don't care. I continue to do my job and I continue to show up at his press conferences. I continue to write stories about him. I continue to ask him questions. I will say the one thing that has maybe inhibited me from doing my job a little bit is that when he sees that it's me asking him a question, unlike another reporter, he's not inclined to answer. He's oftentimes just not inclined to even acknowledge the fact that I'm asking a question. And, of course, part of my job is asking the mayor questions. So that has been challenging, but I also think at the end of the day, it's not like I can't do my job because the mayor refuses to answer my questions. It's just I have to find the answers elsewhere, right?
Chris, and what he's also been very public on his sort of, that the press corps is not reflective of the city at large. And I know Katie Honan, obviously another reporter for the city, has pointed out that his press team or comms team is not reflective of the city at large. Um, Thoughts on that, if any, right?
I mean,
And
of course,
I'm only
yeah.
basing the question on sort of the relationship, which is funny. I talked to Sally Goldenberg a while back, and I was just sort of trying to compare different administrations in the relationship, and or the access to the press. Were
Mhm.
you around during Mayor de Blasio's admin?
The very tail end of it, yeah.
Okay, and what was that like as opposed to this admin? Because there are differences, right?
Oh yeah. I
Um,
mean, I'm not the best person to speak on this because I was only there towards the
got
end.
it.
But I was there during the lame duck period of de Blasio
Mhm,
after the
mhm.
2021
But
mayoral
but
election.
COVID, lame duck, but COVID, right?
Lame
So
duck
it's
but
still
COVID, it's
intense.
true. It's true. He
Still
was still
intense.
very much, he was still very much the mayor and needing to take care of the city, so to say, govern the city. Whereas, what we're seeing with Eric Adams right now, I mean, he's out of the country most of the time. He's in Uzbekistan, he's in Albania, he's in Israel. He's very clearly over there looking for his next job opportunity, which he hasn't been shy about saying involves an international component. So, like, there are a lot of differences between the de Blasio and the Adams administration. I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking there, but I guess one thing to reflect on when we're looking at mayors exiting and in their final few months, de Blasio seemed almost relieved at the end, right? He seemed almost happy. It's about to be over. I can kind of coast. I can ride this out and enjoy myself on the way out. He was doing, he was eating hamburgers on live streamed press conferences and doing kind of silly things and just seeming like he was enjoying himself. Eric Adams on his way out seems very, very bitter. When he is in the city, when he is doing press conferences, which is very rare these days, he often has this knee-jerk reaction of starting to talk about how the media has treated him unfairly and how everyone treated him unfairly and how he hasn't gotten the credit that he deserves. He's become very bitter towards the end. And I think that's a big contrast to how the last mayor left office.
What do you make of this last budget mod where we're adding cops, adding seats, right? There was a story about how that sort of puts the incoming mayor and puts him in a tough position. Obviously, the Elizabeth Street Garden. What are your thoughts on some of those moves? Do you think it speaks to that, what you're mentioning?
I think it's also, Eric Adams does have a legacy, right? And he's proud of his legacy, and aspects of his legacy are absolutely concrete achievements that have happened. And I guess, he wants to try to safeguard these things, right? And one thing for him throughout the administration has been the NYPD, the NYPD, the NYPD, the NYPD. He's always seen that as his crown jewel, one of his biggest achievements, and increasing the headcount for cops, which Zoran Mamdani has specifically said he's against, is something that Eric Adams wants to try to do on the way out. Zoran Mamdani be damned. He wants to try to lay some groundwork for that to happen no matter what. Now, the Mamdani administration can reverse that. Now, is that a politically awkward thing to have to do to move the numbers around and I guess effectively almost strip funding away from the NYPD? Of course it is. And that's a politically complicated. But there's nothing in what Eric Adams has done with that budget mod that can't kind of be peeled back in next year's budget.
Let's talk about Andrew Cuomo now, former Governor Cuomo. Is this effectively the I don't know, is this the end potentially? What do you know? I mean, I heard someone say that 41% in the city plus state, right, could potentially encourage, right, another run statewide, maybe. And ultimately, we're now with the sort of Mamdani election and the effective loss of Governor Cuomo. Obviously, the governor's numbers are moving in the right direction. Not hearing much traction in terms of Lieutenant Governor Delgado. How do you play all of this? Well, I mean, multiple questions in one, but Cuomo's future, what Mamdani's election, and what does it mean for Governor Hochul?
I guess in terms of Andrew Cuomo, to start with him, I don't think we can ever definitively rule out that he's done because he just keeps showing up. You know what I mean? Since he resigned in 2021, there was this constant buzz, right? About, oh, what is he gonna do next? What is he gonna run for? And there was talks about him running for governor again. There was talks about an AG run. There was talks about a presidential run. And then he ends up running for mayor. And then a few days after he drops out of running for mayor, I don't know exactly where these rumors came from, but it almost felt like they were coming from the Cuomo camp, that all of a sudden he's considering running for Congress. I think he's going to continue to test the waters and potentially even run again. Maybe for a U.S. Senate seat. Maybe, I don't know, maybe even for governor. I'm not ruling anything out because it seems the man will just not stop. In terms of Governor Hochul and what Zohran Mamdani's election means for her, it's a very complicated dynamic that the two of them have, right? Because you have Kathy Hochul having endorsed Mamdani, but I think you also have Kathy Hochul, wanting to keep a little bit of a distance with Zoran Mamdani because she knows she has a competitive re-election race to run next year. And statewide, Zoran Mamdani is not very popular. If you look at polling in Long Island, upstate, Zoran Mamdani is kryptonite. People in the suburbs do not like Zoran Mamdani, unlike in New York City. And she knows she needs to pick up votes in those areas too, not just New York City to win. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a balancing act for her to be able to use the elements of Mamdani and the support that he can galvanize for her in New York City at the same time as she wants to separate herself a little bit from him so as not to disillusion voters elsewhere in the state.
Let's wrap this up with the last question, Chris, that's again a multi-pronged question, but speaks to, in some cases, leadership in Washington, Israel, city, state, federal politics, Chiose, Hakeem Jeffries, Brad Lander, Alexa Viles, Dan Goldman, and the 10 candidate race in the Upper West Side for Jerry Nadler's congressional seat. Yeah. Again, there are it's the ripple effect, right? You know, Dan Goldman has a primary, and again, mayor-elect has made endorsements. He's made endorsement a couple of assembly races already. Yeah. So he's, in some cases, he's not shy about leaning in. So I want to hear your thoughts. And is this a litmus test for the DSA's power at large? Can they continue to win in races definitively? Obviously, it'll demonstratively show if there are, you know, potential coattails, right? Yeah. But I want to hear your thoughts, and we'll wrap it up with this last question.
I mean, I think, of course, there's excitement among the DSA crowd after an election like this. This is arguably the biggest win that the DSA has had in this country, is electing Zoran Mamdani mayor of New York City. Now,
bigger than Ocasio?
I mean, who's more powerful? Just, you know, who has more power at their immediate hands?
Yes,
the mayor of New York City, or a congressional representative? Yeah, you know what I mean. But of course, like AOC is very high profile on the national stage with her bully pulpit, but just power at their hands. I think the mayor is has more power at their hands in the immediate sense. But with Chiose, I think, you know, you have an interesting split screen there, right? Where I think the DSA is very galvanized, and Councilmember Osei is obviously excited to try to capitalize on this, no pun intended, to try to use this momentum to launch his own bid and topple, you know, another titan of New York politics, Hakeem Jeffries. It's just, as you know, Zoran Mamdani's camp has been trying to dissuade Councilmember Osei against launching this run. I think that they want to try to, after a big win like this, coming after a pretty brutal campaign, they want to try to keep their powder dry for a little bit, let Mamdani take office, try to make good on some early promises in his agenda, so as not to rock the boat again immediately, even before he has even taken office. But it's interesting with Chiose. I guess he's going to go for it anyways, even though Mamdani is saying, please don't do this. And that's going to be an early test for Mamdani's relationship with the DSA. This might start to cause some friction between him and the organization that kind of carried him to victory, where you might have the DSA organization saying, you know, yeah, run, Chi, run, whereas Mamdani is saying, no, please don't. With the other races you mentioned, I mean,
I have one more. I'm sorry, Chris. I apologize.
Go ahead.
There's another one that is settling of old beefs. Richie Torres and Michael Blake. So go ahead. That's one more.
That feels like a blast from the past almost. But yeah, of course, with the Nadler district, you know, I mean, who is not running for that district? It just feels like we have a new candidate every single day. And it's very hard to read the tea leaves on that because we have so many so many different candidates, many of them with slightly overlapping campaign platforms. It's going to be a fascinating race. It's very hard to
I
tell.
don't sense a DSA influence in that race as
Well,
much.
maybe not. Although the youngest candidate, I believe, youngest candidate who just announced, Cameron Kasky, the survivor of that awful school shooting, he calls himself a democratic socialist. I don't believe
Mm.
he's a member of the DSA, but he identifies as it. As part of his announcement yesterday, he laid out, DSA platform mainstays as his focuses. A Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and an arms embargo on Israel. These are kind of DSA talking points that go back years. So there could be DSA influence there too. Now, with Richie Torres and Michael Blake, speaking of Israel, I know Michael Blake is trying to make that race into a little bit of a referendum on support versus opposition for Israel. It's a little bit unclear to me how good that will play in that district. I just don't know if that district, if that is top of mind for a lot of voters there, right? Like, yes, we know that Richie Torres has been a staunch ally of Israel during his time in Congress, but I also don't know how many of his immediate constituents are voting for him for that reason. I think it's more convoluted than that. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on
He
that
got an
as well.
endorsement from former Mayor Bill de Blasio.
He did, even though Michael Blake has many a times been quite critical of former Mayor de Blasio. So politics makes strange bedfellows.
It may be maybe a referendum, not just on maybe. No, it is based on what I'm reading that it's also still the Cuomo Bill de Blasio back and forth, right?
Yeah. No, right. With
So
Torres having endorsed Cuomo, and yeah, it could be a little microcosm of that
yeah,
again.
and Aviles and Lander, right? DSA Aviles,
Yeah.
uh, reading that Mayor-elect encouraged Lander to run. That's an interesting one as well, right?
And that, I think, speaks to that potential rift that we just discussed between the DSA and Mamdani. Brad Lander was in contention to join Mamdani's administration. That fell through. And per
Hmm.
reporting in the New York Times recently, part of the deal there was that Mamdani would endorse and support Lander for that congressional run. Now, DSA is supporting Alexa Aviles. How is that going to pan out? Are you once again going to have Mamdani supporting one candidate and the DSA supporting another, which ultimately I think would probably benefit Dan Goldman, the incumbent?
Mm.
Because then you have the two progressives kind of fighting over the same voter base. And I don't forget Dan Goldman, even though there's been a lot of buzz about launching his primary against him, he appears to be quite popular still in that district. So it's not going
Mm.
to be an easy race no matter which progressive candidate launches the most credible campaign. But yeah, all of these races that you're mentioning are going to be fascinating to watch over the next year.
All right, now let's wrap this up, but I want to end with this. Three things that this is actually, I think, 101 episodes I've done of this.
Wow.
It really almost to a year to the date when we spoke last, you and I mean, on sort of this platform. Three things that surprise you from I remember our last conversation was around, again, the turmoil. Three
Mhm.
things that have shocked you from last year to this year that even you as a reporter were like, oh Lord, I did not see this coming.
I mean, I will say, I never thought Eric Adams would willingly terminate his reelection campaign. It's just the man has talked about becoming mayor for his entire adult life. And it was the pinnacle of his career. And he's always talked about it as his biggest achievement ever. And I just a year ago could never have envisioned him dropping out of the race. Just even though he was under indictment, it just felt like something that wasn't in his blood. And ultimately he did. Facing a lot of pressure to do it, obviously, but he actually dropped out. And that was personally a big, big surprise. Um, What are some other big surprises over the past year? I mean, of course, yeah, I don't think anyone predicted Zora. Yeah, seems like an obvious one, but Zora Mamdani winning the Democratic primary. It, we felt, especially people who were paying close attention, in the final days of the election, it really felt like Mamdani he had something going that none of the other candidates had. That was very clear. But no polls were indicating that he would be able to pull off a 13% victory over the former governor of the state. That was huge and something that just shocked the political world, not just in New York City, but in the country, maybe even the world. And I guess finally a big surprise. You mentioned the mayor's personal insults lobbed against me. I guess I never thought I would be called a dark and sick person by the sitting mayor of New York, so that was a big surprise too.
Chris, what advice, take off your journalist hat, what advice would you give the incoming mayor as a New York City resident?
Treat the press respectfully. That's still with my journalist hat on. I can't take it off. It's just glued to my head.
Thank you so much, Chris. Anything you want to add? Mention? Did I forgot to ask you?
I think we covered all bases. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'll let you go on. I know a lot happening today, so I'll let you go, Chris. Thank you so much for doing this. Again,
All right.
despite the heavy cycle. Talk soon. Bye-bye.